During the lunch break at work. After eating lunch with my colleagues, I was reading a comic book at my own desk. Even when the bell rang to let us know the end of the lunch break, I was engrossed in the story, wanting to read just one more page. Then, somebody tapped me on the shoulder from behind. When I turned around, it was my direct superior, the department head. In a hurry, I opened the drawer and threw in the comic book. "Hey Johnson, you got a moment? Could you come to the conference room with me?" The department head spoke to me in the same mild and gentle tone as always. Immediately, I got up from my seat and followed the department head to the conference room. When we entered the empty conference room, the department head asked me if I wasn't going to take any more paid leaves. In the previous month, I sporadically took day offs almost every week. "What about it, Johnson? Are you going to take some day offs this month, or not?" Saying that, the department head gave me a sharp stare. As I was lost for words to reply, the department head spoke ruthlessly. "You don't want to work with me, do you? As you wished, you're going to be let go from my department and also from the head office." The department head told me that this was a transfer order. I had no right to refuse, and I was forced to either follow the transfer order or quit the company. "So you mean, I'm being demoted?" That night, when I got home, I told my girlfriend Mary about the situation. I'd been living with her for almost 7 years. I was forced by the department head to choose between following the transfer order or quitting the company, and I chose to stay in the company. The place I was being transferred to was a sales office in a remote area in the Midwest. Mary asked me why I was being demoted. When I hesitated to answer, Mary said, "Could it be that you were trying to change jobs and the company found out?" She hit the nail on the head. With a stunned face, Mary sighed. She said that she had a vague idea on the reason why I was taking day offs during the week and going somewhere. "I have already changed jobs 4 times since I graduated from college. It's not that I have any particular complaints about any of the companies I've worked for. However, once I've been in a job for 3 or 4 years and get used to it, I get bored. Not that I have any ambition either. I just felt like maybe it's about time I tried something different." However, there was another reason why I decided to attempt this 5th job change. I'm already 40. I was thinking of settling down at my next job. And once that job gets secured, I was thinking of going to the next step with my relationship with Mary. So, I consulted with a headhunting agent and managed to get interviews with several companies, but my age was a barrier to get a new job somehow. I was considering giving up on changing jobs. And then came the demotion. I never thought that my job hunting would be found out by the department head. I can understand why your boss got pissed off. His trusted subordinate was secretly trying to change jobs behind his back. I had nothing to say to Mary's words. "So anyway, I'm being transferred, right? So, when I tried to ask her to come with me, Mary cut me off sharply. I have my life here, building my career. Besides, I'm not obliged to follow you to such a remote place. We're not even married." After that, Mary and I got into a heated argument. Being at a disadvantage, I pouted like a spoiled child and took a nap on the living room couch. Then, I began to reflect on my relationship with Mary since I met her. I first met Mary at a friend's wedding reception. She wasn't exceptionally pretty, but there was something welcoming about her face that drew me to her. She asked me about my job. I told her I had switched jobs twice and proudly said, "Staying at one company for too long is outdated." She nodded approvingly and said, "Johnson, you're very career-oriented, aren't you?" She was the one who suggested exchanging numbers. She was also the one who planned our dates for the most part. We became a couple within 6 months. And soon after, we started living together. You know how young couples are constantly giggling together over nothing. That's how we were. We never stopped laughing when we were together. Everything we did was fun. We really need to clean this dusty floor. True, but I can't be bothered today. We laughed our heads off, simply at the thought of skipping cleaning of our apartment over the weekend. Fast forward to about 4 years from those happy days. When I started looking for another job, Mary, upon finding out, questioned my decision. Things at work were going smoothly, and I was well compensated. I didn't have any issues with my coworkers either. Despite all this, she asked me why I was considering changing jobs. Well, because there's a company out there, you know. I jokingly replied, but she didn't laugh. It was clear that she started to doubt my true nature. She realized that my attitude towards work was not about career progression, but simply about being fickle. From then on, her look at me changed. Not just about work, but also about our relationship. Despite living together for so long, I never brought up the topic of marriage, and this seemed to trigger distrust in her. Fast forward another 3 years. We stopped laughing together and stopped doing things together. We felt there was no reason to live together anymore, but we also didn't have a reason to break up either. Amid this uneventful life, I suddenly received the notice of my transfer. I don't expect her to follow me to such a remote place. We're not even married. The idea of resettling the job and the relationship with Mary upon turning 40 was just my own selfish, wishful thinking. The new place of assignment was in rural Montana, way out in the sticks. The office was a rickety old single-story building that seemed to be decades old. 5 male employees of different ages and a 40-year-old woman named Susan, who was the director, worked there. While all the male employees seemed dull, she was different. With her clear-cut facial features and short hairstyle, along with her brisk way of talking and carrying herself, she was the epitome of a successful career woman. I couldn't help but wonder why such a woman was managing a remote office like this one. So, what did you do to deserve this? In a partitioned-off, makeshift reception area, I was summoned by the director Susan and started our conversation like so. I was at a loss for a response. Then, she informed me that unless I stirred up some sort of trouble, I wouldn't have been assigned to this sales office. She said, "If you don't want to talk about it, I won't push you," and changed the subject. She explained that the primary task in the sales office is customer follow-up. Also, our assigned region is surprisingly big, so there would be a need to get around using a company car. She asked me if I had any questions. Well, my company found out that I'd been looking for other jobs. I stuttered, oddly answering her initial question. Something about Susan made me want to share everything. It felt like a magic. Then, she opened my work history document that she had requested from the corporate HR department. "So, you've switched jobs a few times before joining our company, huh?" "Yes, I tend to want to change my workplace when I get accustomed to the job," I replied and found myself repeatedly bowing to her subconsciously. "I see. I have a proposal for you, Restless Johnson. Will you be open to it?" I found her bluntness rather refreshing. She then revealed her plan. Ever since her partner became the director, they had been hoping to improve the performance of this sales office by actively acquiring new customers. However, they lacked the right talent to achieve it. "Would you like to give it a try? Consider it like switching jobs," she suggested. Her gaze held an undeniable intensity. "I'll do it. I have no other choice," I thought. Even if it's a small sales office, if I could contribute to increasing the performance, I might be able to return to the headquarters. That's how my life at the new office began. Though I was expecting nothing out of it, it was surprisingly rewarding and made me hopeful for what we could accomplish. Every weekend, I would visit the apartment where Mary still lived by herself. There, too, things started to change. I was eager for Mary to hear about my week at the new office. I would start trembling. At first, she showed me no interests, but slowly, she began to pay attention to what I was saying. "It seems like you're actually happy about the transfer. You're weird." "It's not a transfer, it's a job switch, a new job." I said it laughing. Mary joined in, calling me a fool. We both burst out laughing. My sales rounds gradually gained momentum, and the number of new clients also steadily increased. The sales office's performance was on an upward trend. Susan was also pleased, and we started to spend more time after work having drinks at the only pub near the office. The sales office, Director Susan, and we all enjoyed a smooth sailing period. However, on a Friday half a year later, Director Susan, who had been out at the headquarters all day, returned to the sales office in the evening. Unlike her usual brisk self, she looked as if she had lost her soul. I rushed over to her immediately. "It's all over, everything," Susan muttered to me, then straightened her back and announced the news to everyone. The sales office would be closed at the end of the next fiscal year. She asked everyone to start considering their next moves as soon as they received their dismissal notices, as there would be nothing she could do about personnel matters at that point. As she slumped into her chair, she looked at me. "They're banning new sales activity too. If we keep adding customers, it's gonna be a hassle later on." Susan had said just that before she buried her face in her hands and slumped over the desk. The closure of our branch and the order to halt all new businesses were a shock to me also. What am I supposed to do from now on? I really wanted to hop on a train and talk about the situation with Mary immediately. However, as I was getting ready to leave, Susan talked to me. "Johnson, would you join me for a drink tonight?" Seeing the look on her face, I decided to postpone going home to Mary until the next morning and join the director for the night. No, I actually wanted to join her. Because Susan and I had been after the same goal together for over half a year since my demotion. In a literal sense, we were comrades in arms. She and I had quite a few drinks at our usual and only pub. All the hard work you've put in, we managed to boost our performance, and yet they're pulling out, shutting down our branch. She grumbled, drinking heavily until she could hardly stand. What happened next? The following morning, as I started to tell the story, Mary leaned in, eager to hear more. I told her about escorting a thoroughly intoxicated Susan to her partner's house, which was about a 10-minute walk from the pub. There was a light on in Susan's house. I hadn't asked anything about her personal life until then, so I didn't even know if she was single or married. So, she's living with her family. I more or less carried Susan to the front door and rang the doorbell. A woman's voice from inside the house answered yes, and the front door opened. "Susan, get a hold of yourself." The woman took hold of the drunk Susan, chiding her. Susan kept repeating, "It's frustrating, so frustrating," under her breath. "Who's that woman?" Mary asked, looking puzzled. "Susan's partner," I replied. "Partner?" I nodded slowly and went on to describe the conversation afterwards between Susan and the woman. Susan clung to the woman in a childish and clingy manner that she'd never displayed at work. The woman gave me a wry smile, saying, "Here we go again," before she took Susan inside, then came back to where I was standing at the entrance. "Johnson, isn't it? Susan is always in your debt," she thanked me sincerely. Susan was sent to that branch because the company took issue with her living with someone who wasn't a spouse or recognized family member, I told Mary. Ever since, Susan had been living in a house they rented themselves, without receiving rent allowances from the company. Monday of the following week. As soon as I arrived at the office, Susan called me over to the reception area. The first thing she did was to apologize for her behavior on Friday, saying she had gotten so drunk she can't remember anything. "I must have caused you trouble by having you take me home, and about what's going to happen from now on," Susan began, lowering her voice. She had decided to resign voluntarily, without waiting for the company's formal notice. When she was reassigned to the sales office, she was headhunted by a client company, she said. At that time, she decided to stay with the company that had demoted her without any wrongdoing, hoping to give them a taste of their own medicine. She wasn't sure if that client would still hire her, but she had several other prospects, so she was planning to look for a job after leaving. "You know, my roommate suggested it might be better that way." And the roommate, Susan's partner, kindly suggested that Susan should lend a hand in my search for a new job if necessary. In other words, as long as I'm the director, I should be able to pull some strings, so why not use your paid vacation or whatever to help look for a new job? What do you think? Director Susan's words made me realize something. Since I was reassigned, I had sealed off the idea of changing jobs. That's why, no matter what order was handed down, I had decided to stay with this company. But the passive attitude would not do any good at this point. Now is the time to change jobs. But I was worried about what Mary would say if she found out I was changing jobs. That was my only concern. I contacted the headhunting agent again and started to look for a job. Thanks to Susan, the process of scheduling job interviews went smoothly. However, I couldn't find a company that would hire me. A month passed and it was time for the boss to leave the office. "I wonder if I've meddled in your situation too much," Susan said when I told her that I was having a hard time finding a new job. At that time, I still had the option to stay with the company. On the weekend, I went to Mary's apartment as usual. "Oh, I see, your boss Susan left the company," Mary said. And then she asked me what I was going to do. When I made a nervous face, she smiled and said, "You were looking for a new job, right?" Over the past month, when I came here for interviews, I had lied and said I was called into the headquarters, but Mary had seen right through it. I told her about how Susan was supporting my job hunting. "With Susan gone, what are you going to do with your job search?" "To be honest, I'm not sure," I replied. "I haven't found any prospective options, so I might end up sticking with my current company until retirement." "You mentioned it before, right? When we first met, that the concept of a long employment at one company is outdated," Mary said, resting her hand on my shoulder. She then spoke. She disliked the idea of changing jobs out of boredom, but would agree 100% if the purpose was to find what I want to do. "Don't you want to find a new job?" I nodded, albeit reluctantly. But I hadn't made my mind yet. Then, Mary took out our joint bank statement from a drawer and showed it to me. "With this much in savings, we can get by with just her income for a while. Leave it to me, so please, take your time and find your next job." Inspired by her words, I resigned from the company, put all my effort into job hunting, and finally secured a job at my desired company. That weekend, Mary and I went out to the city to buy a new suit for me. By chance, we ran into Susan. She was with that woman. We stood there, catching up on what had been going on in our lives. "And how about you?" Susan asked, stepping back and looking at Mary behind me. I took Mary's arm, led her forward. "She's my partner." Mary gave a nervous nod. "Oh, your wife is so beautiful and lovely. Truly, you make a wonderful couple." Susan and her companion agreed. I put my arm around Mary's shoulder and said yes, looking at her. Mary was caressing her shiny wedding ring on her left hand's ring finger with her right hand. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Your subscription and likes give us the motivation to continue our work. We are looking forward to your comments as well. We'll see you in our next video.